When someone chooses silence in the face of conflict, insult, or provocation, it's not always about weakness or submission. More often than not, silence is a conscious act of emotional intelligence, a powerful demonstration of self-control. Emotional control is the ability to manage your feelings and impulses even in high stress or emotionally charged situations. It doesn't mean you don't feel angry, hurt, or frustrated. It means you're able to pause, process those emotions, and choose a response that aligns with your values, your goals, and your peace of mind. That's where silence becomes a tool, not a sign of defeat. People often underestimate the strength it takes to remain silent when someone is trying to push your buttons. Our natural instinct is to defend ourselves, to argue back, or to make our point heard. But giving into that impulse can lead to regret, especially if it escalates the situation or damages relationships. Responding with silence, on the other hand, requires restraint and clarity. It means you've taken control over your emotions instead of letting them control you. You've chosen not to give away your power. In many situations, silence can disarm the person trying to provoke you. When they expect a reaction, when they're hoping for an argument or emotional outburst, and instead receive calm stillness, it disrupts their plan. It leaves them uncertain. They don't know if you're unaffected, unimpressed, or simply rising above. That ambiguity can be more powerful than any spoken response. It creates space for reflection both for you and for them. In that space, you can gain clarity and they might begin to question their behavior. Emotional control through silence is not about suppressing your feelings, but channeling them in a way that doesn't compromise your peace. You can feel deeply and still stay quiet. You can be hurt and still refuse to lash out. It's the strength to hold your ground without having to prove anything to anyone. It's knowing that your silence isn't an absence of thought, it's a presence of mind. Silence also signals that you're secure within yourself. You don't need validation from others. You don't need to convince them of your worth or argue to be understood. You know your truth, and that's enough. That kind of quiet confidence is intimidating to people who rely on ego and control. When they can't get a rise out of you, they begin to lose their grip. Your silence challenges their sense of dominance because it shows they no longer have power over your emotions. Another reason silence is a form of emotional control is that it gives you time. Time to cool down, to think, to observe. In that pause, you can assess the situation more clearly. You're less likely to say something you'll regret. You can respond later if needed from a place of strength instead of weakness. Sometimes silence is just the first move. It's the calm before the calm, not the storm. Choosing silence is choosing yourself. It's saying my peace is more valuable than winning this argument. My energy is too precious to waste on this chaos. And that decision, that quiet act of self-respect, can be one of the most powerful moves you'll ever make. Ego thrives on attention, validation, and most of all, reactions. When someone with a fragile or inflated ego attempts to provoke you through criticism, arrogance, manipulation, or even passive aggression, they are often seeking a specific response. They want to see you flinch, argue, defend, or break. Your reaction becomes the fuel that feeds their sense of control and superiority. The moment you react emotionally, you're handing them the very thing they were looking for: confirmation that they can affect you. An ego-driven person is often not interested in truth or understanding. They are more invested in being right, being seen, being praised, or being in control. Every emotional response you give, especially anger, frustration, or desperation, strengthens their illusion of power. It reassures them that they matter enough to disturb your peace. This is why choosing not to react becomes such a powerful move. Your silence, your indifference, your calm presence, it all disrupts the cycle they depend on. Reactions, especially impulsive ones, are often born from ego as well. When you respond out of pride, out of the need to prove something, or to protect your image, you're operating from the same space they are. This creates a loop, ego clashing with ego, where both parties are just trying to be heard louder, seen more, or validated quicker. And in the end, no one wins. The energy is wasted, the tension grows, and the ego grows stronger on both sides. But when you break that loop by not reacting, by maintaining your composure and not giving them what they want, something changes. The ego begins to shrink, not just theirs, but yours too. You start to realize you don't need to participate in every argument you're invited to. You don't have to defend your worth or respond to every insult. You don't have to lower yourself to a place of drama or conflict just to satisfy someone else's insecurity. That realization is freedom. The reason this is so effective is that egos are fragile. They are built on external validation and crumble in the absence of attention. When someone says something to provoke you and you simply don't respond, it creates a void. In that silence, their own insecurity echoes back at them. They are forced to sit with their own words, their own energy, their own intention without your reaction to justify it. This often leads to discomfort. Sometimes it even leads to self-reflection. The beauty of not reacting is that it keeps you in control. You're not denying your emotions, you're mastering them, you're choosing the higher ground without needing applause for it. And even though it may feel uncomfortable at first, the long-term effect is peace and power. Because not reacting doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're wise, it means you're playing the long game, protecting your mental space and refusing to dance to the tune of someone else's ego trip. Over time, this kind of strength builds a reputation. People begin to understand that you're not easily shaken, that your value doesn't depend on being loud or right or praised. They see your restraint, your calmness, and your refusal to feed chaos, and they respect it, even if they don't say it. Some might even be inspired by it because emotional maturity is rare and ego is loud but shallow. When you choose silence over reaction, presence over pride, peace over power plays, you break the cycle. You stop feeding the ego. And in doing so, you grow stronger while theirs begins to starve. Real power isn't always loud, aggressive, or on display for the world to see. True strength often hides in restraint, the ability to hold back when it's easier to lash out, to stay composed when emotions are high, and to remain grounded when pride tempts you to rise to every challenge. Restraint isn't about weakness or fear, it's about control. It's knowing you have the ability to react, to retaliate, or to dominate, but choosing not to, because you understand that not every situation deserves your energy or attention. There's something deeply powerful about not needing to prove your strength. In a world that constantly encourages people to speak up, clap back, and make noise, the one who can remain silent, measured, and intentional often carries the most authority. This kind of restraint shows that you're not controlled by impulse or ego. You're not moved by every opinion or every provocation. You know who you are, and because of that inner security, you can let go of the need to react. Restraint is often misunderstood. People mistake it for submission or weakness, assuming that if you don't respond, you're incapable or afraid. But restraint isn't about lacking strength, it's about having so much strength that you don't need to show it. It's the quiet confidence of someone who could destroy, humiliate, or dominate, but chooses peace instead. And that choice isn't easy. It takes discipline, patience, and wisdom, qualities that are far more difficult to master than anger or aggression. When you practice restraint, you're not letting others win. You're choosing not to play a game that doesn't serve you. You're saying, I won't let this situation pull me out of character. That is real power, the ability to rise above, to protect your peace, and to walk away without guilt. It takes courage to say less when everything inside you wants to speak. It takes strength to remain still in the chaos, to be the calm in the storm, rather than part of it. Power rooted in restraint also builds respect. People may not always understand it at first, but over time they recognize that you're different. You don't react like everyone else. You don't fall into traps or waste time on petty battles. Your silence becomes a statement. Your peace becomes your power. And those who once tried to provoke you begin to realize that they can't shake someone who doesn't need to be loud to be strong. Restraint also allows you to protect your focus. Every time you react out of emotion, you give a piece of your energy away. That energy could be better used on your goals, your growth, or your healing. By holding back, you conserve your strength and stay aligned with your purpose. You don't let distractions steer you off course. You remain in control of your time, your mind, and your emotions, and that kind of control is rare and valuable. Restraint is about mastering yourself. It's about knowing that not every battle is worth fighting and not every opinion deserves a response. When you can walk away from drama without feeling the need to prove anything, you step into a higher version of yourself. You stop living to react and start living with intention. That's where real power lies, not in how loudly you speak, but in how wisely you choose your silence. Your energy is one of the most valuable things you have. It's the fuel that powers your mind, your emotions, your dreams, and your growth. Where you choose to place that energy, who you give it to, and what you invest it in shapes the direction of your life. That's why it's so important to understand that not everyone deserves your energy. Not every person, argument, or situation is worth your time, your peace, or your focus. Learning this truth can change the way you move through the world. There will always be people who try to pull you into their chaos. They'll drain you with negativity, manipulate you with guilt, or bait you into conflict just to satisfy their own insecurities. Some will try to use your kindness, take advantage of your time, or to make you feel small so they can feel important. And if you're not careful, if you don't set boundaries, you'll find yourself constantly giving, reacting, and explaining until there's nothing left for yourself. That's why protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's necessary. Not everyone who enters your life is meant to stay. Some people are there to teach you a lesson, challenge your growth, or reveal something about yourself. But not all of them are meant to have long-term access to your mind and heart. You don't have to fight for connection with people who make you feel unworthy. You don't owe your attention to people who only show up when they need something. And you certainly don't have to justify your peace to those who thrive in drama. When you learn to guard your energy, you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop engaging in arguments that go in circles. You stop trying to please everyone because you realize that doing so only empties you while never being enough. Protecting your energy means understanding that you are not responsible for fixing others, for saving them from themselves, or for shrinking so they feel comfortable. This doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It means you become intentional. You start to choose where your time and love go. You begin to prioritize people who uplift you, who respect your boundaries, who pour into you as much as you pour into them. You invest in your growth, your peace, and your healing instead of trying to be everything for everyone else. And as you do, your life begins to reflect that shift. Things become clearer. You have more energy for what truly matters. You attract better experiences and more meaningful connections. One of the most freeing realizations is that you don't have to respond to everything. Silence is powerful. Distance is healing. Walking away is strength. Sometimes the best way to win is not to play. By refusing to engage with those who drain you, you send a message not just to them but to yourself that you value your inner peace above all. And that self-respect is a magnet for better things. In the end, your energy is sacred. You can't give your light to everyone without burning out. You have to be selective. You have to be wise. Because the more you protect your energy, the more powerful you become. Not everyone deserves access to you, and the moment you understand that, you start living life on your terms. You stop surviving for others and start thriving for yourself. There's a certain mystery in silence that words can never match. When you choose not to respond, not to explain, not to react, it creates a space of uncertainty that others can't quite figure out. That silence makes people question themselves, their words, and their intentions. It disrupts their expectations and throws them off balance. In a world where most people are quick to react, explain, and defend, your silence becomes unsettling. It leaves them guessing, and that guessing, their power begins to fade. People often expect immediate responses. When they say something to provoke you, hurt you, or even compliment you with an agenda behind it, they're watching closely for your reaction. They want to know they've gotten into your head or under your skin. But when you give them nothing, no anger, no explanation, not even acknowledgement, it disrupts their narrative. Suddenly, they don't know what you're thinking or feeling. That uncertainty can be more impactful than any comeback. Silence becomes a mirror. When you don't fill the space with your voice, people are left to sit with their own thoughts. They begin to hear themselves more clearly, sometimes for the first time. And that can be uncomfortable, especially for those who act out of ego or manipulation. Without your reaction, they are forced to examine the intent behind their words or actions. That reflection is often more powerful than any verbal confrontation could ever be. Choosing silence also keeps you in control. When you don't react impulsively, you maintain your emotional balance. You give yourself the time and space to process things from a place of wisdom instead of emotion. You're not rushing to fix, explain, or defend. You're standing still while the rest of the world races to speak. That stillness can be intimidating because it shows that you're not easily moved. You're not desperate to be understood or validated. You're comfortable in the unknown. The beauty of silence is that it can't be misquoted. Words can be twisted, taken out of context, or misunderstood. But silence is clean. It's solid. It doesn't beg for approval or create conflict. It simply exists, and in its simplicity, it holds power. The more you master the art of silence, the more people start to realize that they can't access you so easily. They can't read your every move. They can't get to you in the way they hoped. That distance unsettles them, especially those who rely on control. Silence also makes people wonder about your intentions. Are you calm because you don't care, or because you've already moved on? Are you holding back because you're wise, or because you're preparing something greater? The questions they ask themselves often say more about them than they ever did about you. That uncertainty becomes a tool, one that shifts the dynamic of power without you ever needing to say a word. In relationships, arguments, or tense situations, silence can shift the outcome. It doesn't mean you're avoiding the truth or bottling up emotions. It means you're choosing to respond on your own terms. You're choosing clarity over chaos, peace over pride. And in doing so, you force others to look inward instead of focusing on your reaction. Letting your silence speak for you is one of the most powerful choices you can make. It shows that your presence alone carries weight and that you don't need to prove your strength through noise. While others scramble to figure out what you're thinking, you're already moving forward with your dignity intact and your energy protected. Choosing silence, especially in moments of conflict or disrespect, is more than just a strategy. It's a form of self-respect. It's a quiet declaration that you value your peace more than someone else's chaos, that you hold your dignity higher than the need to be heard in every situation. In a world where people often rush to defend themselves, argue back, or prove a point, the decision to stay silent can be one of the strongest acts of honoring yourself. Self-respect means recognizing your worth, your energy, and your emotional well-being and protecting it. When someone disrespects you, provokes you, or tries to pull you into drama, reacting is easy. Speaking up, defending yourself, or firing back might feel satisfying in the moment, but it often leads to regret or drains your energy. Silence, on the other hand, requires emotional discipline. It means you're choosing not to give away your power, not to let someone else's behavior pull you out of character. There's a common misconception that staying silent makes you weak or passive. But true self respect isn't about proving strength to others, it's about knowing your own strength and refusing to waste it. You don't have to respond to every insult, participate in every argument, or explain yourself to people who have already made up their minds about you. When you stay silent, you're not giving in, you're rising above. You're saying, I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it to you. Respecting yourself also means setting boundaries. Silence can be one of the clearest and firmest boundaries you can set. It tells people, I will not entertain this behavior, or you do not have access to my emotions. Not everyone deserves a response. Not everyone should be allowed to affect how you feel or how you move. When you go silent, you're drawing a line without ever having to say a word. And the people who truly value and respect you will notice that line and think twice before crossing it again. Silence also gives you space to process. When you choose not to react immediately, you allow yourself the time to reflect and respond from a place of wisdom, not emotion. That pause is a sign of maturity and self-awareness. You're no longer controlled by impulses or ego. You're controlled by intention. You speak when it matters and you stay silent when it protects your peace. That kind of emotional control is one of the highest forms of self-respect. Furthermore, silence can be an act of healing. When you're recovering from pain, betrayal, or disappointment, your silence becomes a form of self-care. You're not explaining yourself. You're not seeking closure from the people who hurt you. You're choosing to heal on your own terms. You're giving yourself the quiet needed to rebuild your confidence and realign with your values. That space, that quiet, becomes sacred. When you respect yourself, you begin to realize that not everything deserves your voice. Not every situation needs your involvement. Your presence is valuable. Your words are powerful. And choosing when to use them or when to withhold them is part of mastering your energy. Silence doesn't mean you're defeated. It means you've chosen peace over pettiness, healing over chaos, and growth over ego. At its core, silence is more than just the absence of sound, it's the presence of self-awareness. It's the decision to choose yourself. And in doing so, you show the world, and more importantly yourself, that your inner world is worth protecting. That is self-respect in its purest form.